Well, so Justin, you said you're flying blind. We're flying a little bit blind.
Makes it exciting.
Thanks for joining us and coming on 8760 to talk about everything and anything, I guess.
Yeah, nothing off the table, I suppose.
Oh, well, okay then. Okay then. I guess tell us a little bit about what aerospace and defense and cybersecurity means as far as your role in Microsoft.
Sure. So I work at Microsoft. I'm part of our newly formed defense industrial base team. Previously, we would go by the name Aerospace and Commercial Defense. So we help support the top 100 defense contractors, and that is across the spectrum of what they're trying to do with technology. My role in particular is to help them with our security stack and helping achieve some of their regulatory requirements. So, how do they achieve compliance with, there's a new framework out there called the Cybersecurity Maturity Model, or how do they protect against nation-state actors and things like Octotempest. So it's very important that these companies protect the secrets that they have and the programs that they have, because a lot of foreign actors are trying to get their hands on this sensitive information.
So you see what we don't see. You get behind the
So
scenes.
before we start rolling, tell us a secret.
Yeah, tell us a secret. Tell us something fun. I will say the things that I've learned that happen behind closed doors will blow your mind. And the higher I get up, at Microsoft, and the more I see, the more I realize. When I was young and trying to climb the ladder, I was very naive, so it teaches me a lot about patience.
That's something I think about all the time. I watch, whether stupid shows or see movies, and part of me is always oh, they have to be so far ahead, we have no idea. And then some things happen in the world and you're like, maybe we're not that far ahead after all, because they should have seen that coming kind of thing.
Yeah. There's a lot of silly mistakes happening out there with defense contractors or healthcare companies or anybody else where you would think, their security should be head and shoulders above everybody else. They should know what they're doing. And unfortunately, silly mistakes happen. And it's typically when companies, in the world of risk, there's something called unknown risks. You just don't know, and you don't have the right people advising you on what those risks are. And that's often where problems happen, because they think they know how to address a risk and they start trying to implement something. But as a result of that, something new is created, some new unknown risk is created. So,
are you creating risks by trying to model potential risks that people weren't even thinking about? It's maybe that's
yeah. So my day job is a lot of that, where we're trying to help companies understand what someone else might not be educating them about. So what is on the horizon? Great example of that is with AI. AI, so artificial intelligence, is helping illuminate problems that already exist throughout people's network. And what I mean by that is, today across your business, I'm sure you have employees that have access to stuff. Well, when you turn on AI capabilities, any of that access, the ability to get that data and drive insights from that data, is amplified. People have it at their fingertips. So if the user has access, well, so does the AI. So you need to restrict access. You need to have, we call them principles of zero trust. So least privilege, verify explicitly, and assume that there's always a bad actor inside your network.
How'd you get in this world?
I stumbled across it. I always tell people I was working at a hotel chain, and I had a really good mentor. And by really good, I mean he met with me a lot anytime I was looking to meet with him, and he'd give me guidance. And to save time, at one point the guidance that he gave me was go off and pursue a master's in business administration. I did that thinking, okay, I'm going to get a promotion at this hospitality company that I work at. It's going to be excellent. More money, better title. Again, I was young in career. I graduated with my MBA. I went back to him and I said, now what? And he said, look, I'm willing to hire you. You're not going to get a pay bump. You're going to have to relocate. My wife was going to med school at the time, and I said, that's probably not going to work. What else should I look for? And he pointed me in the direction of something I never heard of, which are leadership development programs. And he said, try to find a good leadership development program, find out what employers recruit from your school, and see if you could get into one. And for folks listening that don't know what leadership development programs are, those are programs where you join a company and you are part of a rotation seeing different aspects of the business. They're great for people coming out of school. and I found what I thought was a leadership development program, and it was for a company based out of New York, or at least one of their offices. It wasn't. Instead, they sat me down and they said, hey, you're now in the world of consulting, figure it out, you know? And I worked with consultants day in and day out. We were talking a minute ago about being in the office. So I was in the office with all these incredibly smart people. And I just learned through osmosis and being in the room. I didn't have a tech degree. I didn't have a tech background. It's really based on who I surrounded myself with. And I appreciate every person that taught me even just a little bit, you know?
Did you dabble though? I mean, I feel like, or maybe it's not a necessary skill, but I feel like when you talk about AI and cybersecurity, you know, my mind at least goes to, you know, the Guy Fawkes mask and Anonymous and hackers, and, you know, like were you hacking or building apps or something on the side?
Have you guys ever seen Mr. Robot, the TV show?
Yeah.
You got to watch it.
A couple of the early season 1 episodes.
It's phenomenal, and it is probably the most realistic version of what the hacker lifestyle is and the paranoia associated with it, and, you know, how people get into it. I never was into the penetration testing side myself, but I was always a tinkerer. And what I mean by that is I always wanted to understand how something worked and how the pieces came together to perform a function. So I'm more on the side of how do we build something that does something else versus how do I take it apart and how do I identify ways to abuse the way the person built it to perform other functions that give me access or, you know, allow me to command and control. So if you were to ask my wife, if she was sitting here, she would tell you, you're not technical, you don't even know how to save a contact in your phone, you know? But people I meet with on a regular basis, they tell me, hey, Justin, you know, you're really technical, you understand this. I'm not a hands-on operator, so I'm not somebody managing a security operations center, but I certainly can help architect what that should look like, how to leverage it, what are the key technology components. But skill number one is like, you got to be interested and engaged and, you know, want to dig into what's going on with underlying technology.
Does the work you're doing require security clearance?
Yes.
That's all you can say.
Just yes.
We might have had a conversation with someone you know that was in a similar clearance conversation.
Yeah.
We wanted, Ian.
Ian's great. So if anybody
again, another didn't expect, you know, like the, I picture, Microsoft, and I picture the Apple Verizon. Was it the Verizon? It's like
Apple,
it was Apple. It was Mac versus PC. I picture like the PC, right? Like,
you know, when I joined Microsoft, I saw a job listing for a position that I knew I was a perfect candidate for. And when I interviewed, I told them, look, you're not going to find anybody else that has the skills, qualifications, and an understanding of like what you're asking for in this job description. And I was extremely direct with them about that. And I forget where I was going with that, but the reason why I forget where I was going
You're
with
atypical.
it. Yeah, well, no, I guess with Microsoft, they look for something very specific, and guys like Ian have a very specific tradecraft in being able to translate technical requirements to things that business leaders can know and understand. And for Ian, if anybody hasn't listened to that podcast, he is the thought leader behind Zero Trust, like hands down, anybody that gets an opportunity to meet Ian. And he's a young guy, you know, he's, you know, probably slightly older than me. And here he is building out a vision for how national governments execute principles of least privilege. Like, it's kind of mind blowing what he does.
Yeah, he couldn't give us any like real details, but like at one point he was basically like, I got an invite to go to a pre-event in like at a Vegas conference that required specific clearance that like only 10 other people in the world got to see. And I was like, okay, so you've seen and you've heard some things.
Yeah. The people that he briefs on a regular basis is pretty mind-blowing. And the way I met Ian too, so he's a Microsoft employee, I'm a Microsoft employee. We don't have a physical office here in the state of Connecticut. We just happen to be on a distro list together, and a few Microsoft employees tried meeting up for a holiday lunch, and we got together and we're sitting across the table from each other, and it's like, hey, what do you do? And he outlined what he did and who he was working with. And I was like, well, why don't I know you? Because I'm doing something that is pretty much extremely similar. And from there, we hit it off and, started doing a lot more work together. So
you kind of, good transition, right? You mentioned Connecticut, and you guys are, both in Connecticut. Being remote, and probably many of the clients that, well, at least Ian worked with, or I'm assuming you work with as well, are not necessarily in Connecticut. What's kept you here?
Wonderful question. Connecticut is on the precipice of something big. We have something that you cannot change, which is location. We are located between two major cities, Boston and New York. And I grew up here in Connecticut. You can't change that either. But from a business perspective, we have something that nobody else could offer between those two cities. And your ability to get around from Connecticut, I have 6 major airports within an hour and a half driving distance of me. So I could get to anywhere relatively quickly. When I look for flights, I'm like, all right, which airport gives me a direct flight? That's the one I'm driving to, because I'm not into the connections. And then the other thing is the talent pool. So we have something called Aerospace Alley here in Connecticut. We have 3,000 aerospace component manufacturers in the state. We are the 6th largest defense contract, the 6th largest receiver of DoD funds by a state, and we're a pretty small state, so to receive that much is pretty significant. And you're absolutely right. Most of the customers I interact with, they're also remote teams. They're scattered all over. Their headquarters are anywhere from, Connecticut. There is one of mine that's headquartered here in Connecticut, to San Diego, to Florida, to other locations as well. And those teams are willing to meet anywhere. But we have talent coming out of Connecticut through University of New Haven, Quinnipiac University, UConn, and this cybersecurity talent is top caliber. So I'm constantly trying to connect my customers and the folks that I interact with, even Microsoft internally, with those schools, because we have an incredible talent pipeline, incredible. So it's the people.
The partnerships with, on the cybersecurity side, and I think there's an NSA partnership with one of the universities or a couple of universities. Has that been part of that evolution?
So the NSA certifies certain schools as a center of excellence, and they have a few different categories for that center of excellence. Like I think one is cyber operations, and I can't remember the 2 or 3 other categories. University of New Haven is a accredited NSA school. They also run a very interesting program at UNH, and shout out to Dr. McNee, where they will bring in high school teachers or middle school teachers over the summer. It's called Gen Cyber. And they will actually train teachers on how to embed security into their curriculum, whether they're a security teacher or not. How do you bring that cybersecurity conversation into the classroom? And that's a partnership with NSA specific to a certified school, and it's run over the summer to help scale it out, right? What we needed is that rising tide in Connecticut. Let's make everybody cyber aware and understanding of the risks, and let's lead as a state as related to cybersecurity.
Can you give me examples of that? Like someone, I know nothing about cybersecurity. Like I'm sitting here listening, came in cold, didn't know who you were, didn't know where you worked, knew none of this, and then you're saying things that I don't know what that means. So I'm way out of this. So explain it for me.
So
like what would a professor be doing to embed security?
So first off, there's cybersecurity degrees. So somebody that's looking to get involved in a career path that I have, they might try to pursue a bachelor's in cybersecurity or master's. And within the world of cyber, there's a ton of different jobs. You could be a cybersecurity engineer, which means you might be building a system. There's cybersecurity architects, which means you might be designing the system. You might be a cybersecurity analyst, which might mean you're looking at different pieces of information, trying to correlate different feeds and supply that up to like a tier 2, tier 3 SOC analyst. So a professor is likely educating students on all of those future career opportunities and developing the skills and knowledge in order to be successful. However, as like a parent, right, we have kids. As a parent, there are so many cybersecurity risks out there for students, for youth. And I am part of a program here in Connecticut called Digital Defenders. It's a nonprofit. And what Digital Defenders mission is to help educate youth on online privacy and security risks. And we recently went into schools, middle schools, specifically that 6th, 7th, 8th grade area, to help teach students on how to be secure online. And predominantly what we're talking to them about is passwords, how to have good, strong passwords. We showed them how easy it is to crack passwords. We had a fun little game that we played of like, hey, let's design a password and see how long it would take to crack it. And leaving that, they all knew how to build a strong password, how to use password managers, like what's a good password manager, what's not. They all learned how to protect certain information that might be private. We had open conversations about like what is risky behavior online and like how, for instance, a lot of young boys play video games, right? And like if somebody's asking you odd questions, like maybe you shouldn't be playing with that person,
It's like the new AOL chat room.
Yeah, it's dangerous, right?
ASL.
Yeah, and it was alarming how many students were like, oh yeah, somebody asked me to show them my house, and it's like, I want to be careful about that. And even when you talk to students about cyberbullying, and that is not necessarily a cybersecurity risk, but it is a security issue and it is a privacy issue, which those two are hand in hand, cybersecurity and privacy. So, cybersecurity, what is it? It's protecting the secrets that you have. What do you want to keep yours and how do you do it? How do you achieve it? So,
where do you fall on because we've in some of our prior events and the topic has come up, and on the spectrum of sort of regulation versus education, obviously one side feels as though any type of regulation is going to inhibit innovation and growth and the attractiveness of Connecticut or the environment for new businesses. And then the other side of the aisle is basically like, if we don't regulate everything, then my daughter's nude photos are going to end up on the internet somehow. So where do you fall on that?
There's things that we need to do at a federal level, and then there's things that we need to do at a state level. And then we as consumers need to be more aware and set the right expectation. The unfortunate, well, I shouldn't say unfortunate, this generation that is in school right now, they are digital natives and AI natives, which means they have technology at their fingertips, they have AI at their fingertips. They're growing up in a society where they assume no privacy. They assume their data's out there. In our generation, that assumption didn't exist. We assumed what we did at our house was at our house and nobody knew about it. They assume that everything they do is being recorded, being filmed, somebody somewhere could use it as blackmail, which is just interesting, right? And then how do you take that and then tell them as consumers, you need to be more vigilant of what people do with your data and the potential for manipulation, right? And how what you give up in terms of your data could be used in a variety of ways to motivate you, to get you to buy something, to get you to share something, and what those risks are. So at a state level, we've got a lot of regulation going on, maybe not so much. I will give Connecticut a compliment that they are unique in the fact that they have two bills that benefit companies in a great way. The first is a bill that says if you implement certain cybersecurity practices, they will actually indemnify you from third-party claims. So if you have a consumer breach and those consumers are going after you like in a class action lawsuit, they will protect you against that suit, which is pretty incredible. They're one of few states that have that. The second, they have legislation to incentivize data centers to be built here in the state of Connecticut, which is incredible. They will give significant tax benefits for any technology company or non-technology company to build their data center here in the state of Connecticut. So that's examples of positive regulation. It's not something that's telling you you must do. Instead, it's a carrot that incentivizes you to go the right way.
What is the value for me to have data centers here?
For you as an owner of this company?
No. Me as a resident of Connecticut.
Jobs, innovation.
Isn't it just a big old building with servers and one guy roaming?
Yeah, but somebody needs to go build it. Somebody needs to maintain it. Swapping in and out of hardware and drives happen quite frequently. But without the data, like if it's not the data center, what is it going to be? And if it's going to be nothing else but a pile of dirt somewhere. Like, I also really enjoy piles of dirt. Yesterday I had a landscape designer come to my house, and we walked around and looked at all my piles of dirt, and I paid her a lot of money. But data centers provide economic opportunities, future job growth. And if you look at Georgia, and if you look at how Atlanta exploded in particular, it is because they developed underground fiber that went from Atlanta proper up to Alpharetta, Georgia, and there's a significant grouping of data centers up there. And that happened, I want to say, the early 90s, and that allowed a tech boom to happen in Atlanta. And now look at how Atlanta's doing, right? So Connecticut is just starting to set that foundation, and I think it will attract businesses, and I think what you guys are doing to really change the conversation is leading to some meaningful impacts throughout the state.
I think just getting some of the typical kind of contrarian opinions or the misinformation out and talked about, right? As you guys were going back and forth, my mind went immediately to the person that's just like, we're going to give that business a tax break, and our rates are already high enough, and so they're not going to pay for the power that's going to power the servers, and I'm going to pay for it. It's just like I could hear it, right, already happening. So I think those are the types of things where exploration of, okay, well, what if we don't, right? Or what if we do? Or what is it, that's what we're trying to get out of talks like this, talks like, the panels and the event, because it's there's always some nuance to it. It's not just, the one opinion or the other,
Yeah, completely agree. And, the more there is a healthy debate or healthy conversation about what the future holds and how we could collectively move in that direction as like a group of citizens, the better off we are. And I think in Connecticut, we've started to realize the uniqueness of our state location. We've started to realize the uniqueness of some of the schools and institutions and the talent coming out of those schools. If you poll the population, you'll realize that like most people that live in Connecticut, they live here because they have a family, right? And they know what a great location this is to raise a family. They know what a great community it is to raise a family in. And people want that. They want Four Seasons, right? And now it's like, okay, how do we convert that to then drive businesses here to the state? And how do we help them see all the positive benefits of being located here? And how do we, if you look at what Advanced CT is doing, which is, I don't know if it's a government organization or not a government organization, but Advanced CT is helping promote Connecticut to certain industries like the tech community. And they are moving the needle in attracting software companies to come to Connecticut and build in Connecticut. They're attracting technology infrastructure companies to come build in Connecticut. So, once we know what industries we want at a state level, then we could really have meaningful conversations and drive impact.
That's what I was asking, about what kept you here or got you to come back here, and because Ian's in a similar boat, and others, if they're working remote, there's cheaper areas, or they're making enough money where it doesn't really matter, right? But something kept.
We tried to go to the cheaper, warmer location. So we grew up in Connecticut. We moved to New York, Manhattan. Then we moved down to Atlanta. We want somewhere cheaper, warmer, bigger house, and we realized cheaper, warmer, bigger house. Not having Four Seasons sucked. Being far from family, terrible when you had kids. And the pace of life is just completely different. It's not what we grew up with. And I think as somebody that grew up in Connecticut, it's very easy to come back to Connecticut, especially when I have family. But for people that are located in the South, when they come visit Connecticut, like one of the first things they do is say like, oh my gosh, you guys have snow, you have fall, you're close to a beach, right? Like we could go to a bunch of different beaches relatively quickly. We could go skiing relatively quickly. We could fly to anywhere in the world, relatively quickly. Our location's incredible. Other states don't have that. And the more people come to realize that, the more they start thinking about, okay, I could be in Connecticut.
Well, I think you say moving down south cheaper. I'm from Virginia, North Carolina. This is actually cheaper.
Of course.
This is actually cheaper.
Especially the Beltway.
Well, now you were close to Reston, right?
Yeah. But even my family's still there, and they don't live. They live west of Richmond. It's not a, it's not a bustling area, and it's not low cost. Because during COVID, I looked, and it was 1-to-1 for a house, an hour and a half west of, like, off of 81 in Southwestern Virginia, 1-to-1 in cost. Like
fun fact about, I think it's Virginia that I learned literally last week, but if you are a veteran, there is unique scholarships available for your kids in Virginia to be able to go to higher ed for free. So they get a lot of veterans that settle down there. So there's high demand for that area, right? Yeah. In Connecticut, I'm sure we'll develop something unique and different to have more people settle here. But man, demand's hot right now. I don't know. I recently moved, and getting into a new house was like near impossible. You're bidding against everybody from New York saying, hey, New York's not for me. I want to go somewhere else.
That's the market has certainly maintained here. I think I have friends that are looking, and they said that they were informed that there's the lowest inventory that has ever been tracked or on the market right now. So
low inventory, high prices. Houses that you would not think to sell for that price, going pretty quickly because somebody's willing to scoop it up.
And those COVID materials costs price increase didn't really come down as much as
it still adds COVID.
As long as people will pay, right?
But as many as people fled New York City for the last 5 years, COVID of quality of life, the buzz right now coming off of the mayoral elections in New York City is businesses coming here. Mm-hmm. That's what I've been hearing and seeing is there's just now such change creates uncertainty and someone who, declared himself a socialist Democrat is now Stamford, like Fairfield County of now being this destination for businesses that it wasn't a couple of years ago. And so, people moved out for the beach house, they moved out for the yard, but now businesses seem to be starting to look over here in a new way.
And I think that trend's been happening for a while. That hospitality company that I mentioned that I worked at pre-COVID, they moved to Connecticut really for some tax reasons from New York, and they continue to invest in Connecticut. You guys made a huge investment in Connecticut. I don't know how many people have had an opportunity to visit you guys at your headquarters, but this place is gorgeous. So, what brought you guys into Connecticut?
My prior life, I mean,
mine was a relationship. My ex dragged me here. So we ranked where we wanted to go. I put Connecticut dead last. Yeah. Right. I didn't know I was in New York City. Right. Connecticut wasn't cool. Yep. And then came here, and now that was 13 years ago. I don't want to leave. Mm-hmm. Right. I had to come here to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm Long Island originally. Went to undergrad in Boston, and then. Went back to Long Island, wasn't sure what I really wanted to do when I grew up, and interned at the Kings County District Attorney's Office. Thought I'd give law a try. Went to Quinnipiac Law School. Ended up practicing here, right after graduation, passing the bar, and ultimately made career changes and everything else. But I've been here since 2000.
He met me.
So Connecticut should look cheap to you too, if you lived in
I mean, it's not.
Well, I joked moving out here, it was my retirement.
Yeah.
Because it was like this slower, because coming from New York City, and it's like, it's a slower, the cost of living in Brooklyn, I got a beach house. Yeah. Right? And I'm like, I got dogs, there's wonderful.
A yard, there's grass, you know?
Yeah. Who knew?
Yeah.
But I do think that's where, Connecticut's trying, right? And there's a lot of organizations that are trying to lure businesses here or, kind of create that narrative. And it feels like if there's a specific opportunity for a young professional that is interested in, cybersecurity, and those opportunities are presenting themselves here, great. And we should plan, for that growth. But the idea of keeping everyone here and, seeing someone going away to school as a loss, I think that's kind of skewing our own metrics. And because just like you or like others, that's the 4 years, go see other areas, right? But ultimately, you're going to come back, right? Yeah. And I think it's like if Connecticut embraced that, because it's like you come back for quality of life, for proximity and everything else. And at that point in your life, because hear it, right? And the way you're talking about all of the things, they're the negative that it's the same exact conversation, right? Like we're between New York and Boston, right? Like like there's not really like a hub airport. You got Bradley, but you have to go to
I love
Logan.
Bradley.
No, yeah, absolutely. But that's the difference right now. Like once you are seasoned, right? Like once you've seen other areas, and you kind of now you appreciate,
You come to appreciate
the shoreline, the hiking, everything.
Yeah, like when I was younger, I didn't have appreciation for any of that. I was mentioning earlier patience. Doing what I do now, I've just learned the speed at which things happen. Like at Microsoft, things change every single day, every single second. But at the same time, like change takes a while to implement, right? And growing up, you have access to all these great resources. You do all these great things, and you don't realize how incredible it is. Like the fact that you could go to the beach on the weekend. When you're living in Atlanta, Georgia, and you're like 6 hours from a beach, like you learn to appreciate it. When you go to a giant airport like Hartsfield-Jackson, and you're lost, and there's just a sea of people as if it's 7th Ave in Manhattan, and you're going to miss your flight. You come to really like Bradley and being able just to walk right past security and get onto your flight. I would also say Connecticut's probably a story of innovation. A lot of people that have had traditionally a loud voice might be business owners that have been in business for a very long time. They have ways of doing business that are as old as their companies. And competition is evolving rapidly. AI is allowing companies to evolve rapidly. And for any company that isn't making changes, isn't keeping up with technology, it's going to get a lot harder for you. Yeah, competition's going to get tougher. And yeah, it's going to feel like maybe there's not the same opportunities here. And I get frustrated with companies I talk to when they're not engaging the schools. Like you have needs, you want to be more creative as an example, but you're not engaging those folks that could help you. And how do we get them engaging and asking for that help and saying, maybe what I've been doing isn't the way I should do it moving forward. So, but yeah, I always advocate for business leaders, go engage the school in your backyard, tell them what you think your future needs are, so that way those teachers could go start training students in that way, right?
That's another benefit too, right? The per capita, amount of universities in Connecticut versus anywhere else. But it's a great point. There's so often we see, there's a talent gap, or they don't have the skill sets. And okay, so then
do something.
Work with the schools to define what you need, right? Yep. And you'll have a nice, easy pipeline. People don't want to, really look for a job. So if they can just go through the path of evolution, they'll do it.
I'm part of a program with Ready CT, which is based out of Hartford. The school that I'm directly engaged with is Pathways Academy out of East Hartford. And they partner very directly with employers on what are those future career needs, and they start training them for that career while they're in high school. That way, the employer has lots of candidates to choose from that are incredibly qualified, and they get to cherry pick which candidate they want. And they didn't invest $1 to ramp that employee and bring them up to speed because the teacher is focused on that. So it's a different way of building out your workforce. And a lot of people complain about the skills shortage, but yet they're not doing anything about it. I'm a big believer of get out there and do something.
What do you think about, because you've mentioned a couple of great organizations that we're familiar with and have crossed paths with or worked with in the past. Part of, at least from my personal opinion, I won't bring anyone else under the bus, right, is that the number of organizations, right, props to everyone who's doing something. That is the first, kind of full appreciation. But the fragmentation hurts the narrative, and because if people got together, right, the voices are going to be louder, and that seems to be at least, some of Connecticut's struggle is that there are great people, great organizations, some that are trying to create that change, but it's just not coming together to drown out those two cities necessarily.
There's a lot of silos, a lot of barriers, there's a lot of fiefdoms, and the more we could break down those walls, the better off we all are. Absolutely agree. And at the state level here in Connecticut, there's something called the Governor's Workforce Council that is trying to address some of that. How do we break down those fiefdoms, get different groups, different organizations having an impact together? And one thing that I am very persistent on is I'm lucky to be working at the company I am. I'm super grateful. And that company has a ton of free resources. And it's like, how do I bring those free resources into my backyard to all these incredible programs that already have it? And Ian is of the same mindset. There's a bunch of us Microsoft employees here in Connecticut that we all try to do the same thing, because it's no good working with one group that is isolated, that is fragmented, that's not working with another group to like scale it out and have that rising tide of Connecticut. I will say another really cool thing that's happening, I know you guys are involved with what's going on in Stamford, but building out a tech corridor and having incredible talent coming out of that UConn Business School and all the different large corporations that are down there. So there's a lot of pockets of goodness. We need people working together more, right? And we need people engaged in the conversation and offering up something and participating, right? Not always having their hand out, but giving a hand up.
Yeah. Why do you think we have fiefdoms here?
A lot of programs are grant funded. A lot of programs are, sponsored by maybe a corporation, and it's important to keep that revenue side. It's just like with customers, right? Like when you run a corporation, you don't necessarily want to bring in partners that might do the same thing as you, because that jeopardizes your revenue. So, I think some of those fiefdoms exist because they need to protect their revenue. And, what Connecticut as a state is trying to do is say, how do we move the conversation? How do we attract more? How do we build more? And in order to do that, they have to bring these fiefdoms down. They have to diversify where they're spending money and developing programs, and they need to have a higher impact per dollar. Like some of the things I see now being at Microsoft in terms of like how many people we're trying to impact with a dollar. So, you could go on our website and see we have like this AI initiative where we want to try to educate 20 million people in, I want to say, the next 2 or 3 years on AI and get them certified for something that we have called AI 900. And like the amount of money that we're dumping in it, and when you do the math, it's like, wow, it's a low cost per person that we're trying to educate. And then if you apply like a similar financial model to what the state of Connecticut is doing and how much they spend per person that they're educating, like it's pretty high. And some of those silos might say like, hey, I need to keep that cost high. I need to recover that amount of revenue for training. It's like, but there's a lot of good programs that could execute at a lower price point. Like, let's all work together and let's supplement what you're doing so you could bring the cost down and touch more people and have bigger impact.
And maybe partially it's a mechanism of just, get rolled up into whatever that is already going.
And I would say we are so lucky to have those beacons as part of our community versus a different community. And we, at least with Sikorsky, as an example, going back to some of the stats of Connecticut's defense community, we outshine New York and Massachusetts all day. Like, we produce more products and New York and Massachusetts can't touch us. We have this tech corridor that is just pumping out technologies and innovations for the defense community, for the aerospace community. And we need to remove some of the shadows, as you put it, and highlight the companies that are doing the great work, and the companies that are innovating, because there's plenty of them all throughout Connecticut. And the ones that typically get the spotlight are the ones that are engaged in these conversations, the ones that are showing up to the Chamber of Commerce or the event or the other thing. The ones that aren't getting the spotlight are the ones that are like busy and they're hustling and they're getting it done and they're doing it. And there are a lot of those companies in Connecticut. It's just They don't care to get involved. I met a guy, he's now down at LSU, and he used to run the cyber program at UNH. And I remember the first time I met him, and I told him what my vision for Connecticut was in terms of cybersecurity, which is, being the leading state in developing cybersecurity talent. And he goes, Justin, that 100% aligns to what I'm doing. I said, great, how do we partner up, make something happen? He says, I could care less to deal with the politics. I could care less to deal with the people. Like, I'm just gonna go execute and we'll build the name. People will start to know. And sure enough, nowadays, people know UNH is an incredible cybersecurity school. Now he's going to go and replicate the same thing down at LSU, but the people that are really making an impact, doing incredible things, they're not necessarily the loudest voice in the room. They're just doing it very successfully. And I'll put you guys in that category. Like, yes, we're here talking about this today, but you guys are getting it done. You guys have an incredible workforce. You put on incredible creative content, thought leadership, help companies build their brand. But a lot of people in Connecticut wouldn't recognize your brand, your own brand. They wouldn't recognize you as a Connecticut-based business. But, I don't know your space, but I would say you're probably one of the largest marketing agencies, if not the largest in Connecticut.
Yeah, well, here's my bad theory and solution for this whole thing. Connecticut's not social enough, right? We need more drinking. We need a Uber credit, right, for everyone. Go out and connect, communicate, because there is the fiefdom, there's the competition. Because even like shaping, we've done multiple events, right? And in these events series, events themselves, partnership, like come join us, like take part. We threw a creative one. It was like we went to organizations like whatever you want. You want the stage, you want an exhibit, whatever you want, and people go, like, what's in it for you? That, like, people were asking, like, what's in it for you to give me something? So much questioning, so much uncertainty. And people have that barrier all between us. Go out and drink. Yeah. Show up to an event. Show up.
It's rooted in something. Everything comes from something.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And the example I could give you, again, is going back to, Atlanta. They have something called the Technology Association of Georgia. It was an industry consortium, membership-based. Corporations paid money to be part of it. And people went there to network, exchange opportunities, exchange ideas, and all innovate and grow together. And, a lot of people found their future job prospects there. A lot of people found their customers there. And when I moved back to Connecticut, I asked them, like, hey, who's the equivalent of Technology Association of Georgia here in Connecticut? And they connected me with the group. And, like, it's night and day difference. So, yes, we need those networking opportunities, those social events. Yeah. I think Connecticut's also unique that people are here because they're raising a family. And I can speak for myself.
Yeah.
4 young kids, 8, 6, 4, and 2. Like, the only networking I'm doing is if my kids are allowed to, like, hang from the chandelier and, eat a lot of good food.
We've never said shaping doesn't allow kids.
Yeah, there you go. So,
but part of the diversity of folks in Connecticut, I think also, as great as that is, I think also makes it somewhat tougher, if you're in Silicon Valley, right? Like anywhere you go, you're going to meet another person in the digital or technology field. So there's some, where, Northaven, Wallingford, Milford.
We're not an industry state. We're an industries state.
You're right, because it's like there's every spectrum of type of occupation represented if you go to Lou Dolls, right? It's like it's not as in a good way, homogeneous as far as like, I'm going to go and talk, to talk shop today. DC gets the rap for like, everything revolves around politics. The diversity we have is great, but I think it does create those barriers. And then you have people that are just trying to survive at night.
and I think there's a lot of people in Connecticut that are really comfortable in their jobs. Like, again, a lot of those networking things, those social things, they exist because people are trying to grow. They're trying to, change maybe. They're looking for new opportunities. And in Connecticut, a lot of people are like, you want to know what? I've made it. I'm doing good. I don't need all that stuff. And there's probably an aspect of that. And in those other states, again, because people are trying to grow and all that, like the social aspect, at least first thing when you say social is I think social influencer. And everybody wants to be a social influencer. But in Connecticut, you're absolutely right that like the people I meet, they're not necessarily out there over promoting themselves or their businesses on social. And that could, going back to innovation, could help them move the needle, right? They need to promote themselves a little bit more, and that will help Connecticut-based businesses grow. But I think it makes that
those collisions of innovative thought like tougher, right? You know, because it's you go pick up the kids at daycare, and you know, so when you have the attorney, you know, family, you have the, you know, public service. Like it's just there's not that. You may have a contact, like if I ever need, you know, health insurance, or you know, I have someone to reach out to.
Guys in Connecticut,
Yes, lots of insurance, but it's not as much like, oh, like I want to go talk about that, you know, that idea, that concept, or something, or anything like that.
Yeah, there's not enough pockets of similar base companies. Like again, there's aerospace companies, there's insurance companies, there's wonderful pizza companies. We all know that living in Connecticut, but there's not all the other mass grouping of companies where there's a lot of like employees in a close proximity, and that's different from other cities or other states. And I think we also come from places that are like bustling in a business community, Virginia and the Beltway and Reston and Atlanta and New York and Boston. Like these are happening places. But if you're in Cleveland or Columbus, not to throw any shade at them, but I would suspect, you know, they're probably very much like Connecticut. You know, they're not prominent cities, and our expectation is like prominent, marquee, world-class city. And you know, we're building it. We're building an incredible state here.
So what are some things you're working on that you're excited to share, or you know, you think would be interesting for folks that are going to be in attendance on the 19th?
Yeah, I think it's all about AI innovations right now and what's going on around transformation. Companies are evolving. So one of the schools I work with, high school, again, Pathways up in East Hartford, Connecticut. I unfortunately had to tell the teacher I couldn't meet today for our advisory session to make sure he stays up to date with trends. And one of the things I put to him over a quick email is like, hey, in the past, companies were executing a strategy based on an annual basis. You know, they were building what their plan was, and they were sticking to that plan and not changing course. Well, because of AI, we find companies are pivoting every quarter now. And our CEO, Satya Nadella, came out with a very interesting quote. I'm sure people will quote it for years, which is, we need to think in decades, but execute in quarters, you know, because we need to be so far out ahead of everybody, but we need to execute with precision, and we need to like do it here and now in order to continue to grow. And because of the advent of where we are with generative AI, what you were doing probably 3 months ago is completely different than now. Like just even look at your iPhone with Apple Intelligence and what you were capable of 3 months ago, and now what you're capable of. Last time you searched a picture, right? Now you could search for text in a picture. You weren't able to do that a couple months ago. So how we operate is changing rapidly, and being able to work with executive leaders at large companies and share what those innovations are looking like and the impact it can make for their business, and then how to think about security when they think about that massive change they're going to undergo. To me, that's fascinating, you know. And I don't know how you guys think about it. I'm sure being a creative agency, you guys probably use AI all over the place, right? And there's probably a lot of different use cases. In my world with defense contractors, we're still trying to make sure we restrict how that AI usage is because we're unsure. There's a lot of question marks around AI. So AI is really a whole new world to these defense contractors. And helping them understand, like, the more you allow your employees to use AI, the more opportunities you have to become more efficient, to ideate faster on ideas, to break down silos and barriers, even to develop equitable opportunities for data for end users. So like we're all about how do you get it in the hands of everybody? Like it shouldn't be just 3 people that have access to AI, like their own little AI assistant. How do we give it to everybody so everybody has an equal playing field and they can move just as fast? And what we're finding is employees take that and they say, hey, what's the hardest thing that I've been working on? And they find a way to completely change that process, that procedure, that program, that thing they work on, and it becomes way more efficient, way more impactful to the business and to the individual employee. And it changes how happy they are in their job. Another good example of that is like with defense contractors. A lot of, as crazy as it sounds, now that we live in a post-COVID world, some defense contractors didn't want to allow virtual meetings for a very long time. Like, you had to be in person inside of a specific room to have a conversation. And, over the past 3 years, more and more defense contractors are allowing remote meetings to take place. And nowadays, it's pretty mainstream. But imagine a world where, you're restricting that technology use. So it's exciting what's happening with technology right now, and changes on the horizon.
I mean, we've embraced it for sure. I think, for us, so much of what we do, whether it's in video or in creative or brand, is really around that storytelling component, which, we believe requires still some level of humanity and emotion. But that said, using technology and AI to access larger swaths of data to get deeper insights faster, right, allows the humans to put, more of a creative and thoughtful stamp, into the work. So, we've definitely embraced it. I mean, even early AI, but, kind of before it took center stage, our goal in our, with the Rebellion Group and Virtuoso 535 and Rebel, Virtuoso and always intended to be and is, right, the action oriented Deloitte, BCG, Bain, McKinsey, et cetera, right? And the reason why they were so skilled was because they had teams of analysts that would pull reports and pull data and compile it into a 200-page finding doc, and that was the skill, with the origin. Now, boom, I can get on an LLM and do it in 15 minutes, right, or less. Yeah. And now it becomes, okay, what are you going to do with that? How do you interpret it? How do you take the human factor of that could work in a vacuum in an LLM, but here's the factors that are cultural tensions and socio-political influences and trend adoption and all the other things that are really at play that humans are still better at.
And in our industry, I'm seeing, if there's a spectrum of adoption or usage, understanding. Some of the largest organizations, the holding companies in our, that control almost everything, they're on one end of the spectrum where they're trying to completely adopt and transform and cut out the human factor. Right, the head of WPP said within the last couple of weeks, I don't believe him, but he said it's to free up time for people to be more creative. No, you laid off your creative people, right? You're trying to optimize, you're trying to streamline, you're trying to increase profits, right? That's one of the spectrum, and that's ruining the industry, and it's ruining a lot of things. It's taking away jobs from people. On the other end of the spectrum are the laggards who are not doing enough to understand it. They're not adopting it at all, and they're falling behind. And in between is this sweet little spot of play. Right? Play with it. Mm-hmm. Figure it out. Find out how it works for you. Find out how it can make you understand something better. Just play with it. Just mess around. And that's that great spot. And that's what I try to instill in these folks. And is play with it. Yeah. Get to an idea faster, right? Make the idea better. Bring it to a client and try to get them excited about it. Because you can make it now in minutes, where before we were pitching theory, we were pitching something they couldn't picture in their brain. You can make it now.
We're going to see a change of jobs, just like all evolutions. And, having 4 young kids, I worry about future of jobs. However, I do believe how we work will change drastically. I don't necessarily know how the quantity of jobs will change and be fully impacted, but it will change and it will evolve, and what we know as work today will change in the future. I am a big proponent of exactly what you said. Use it. Leverage it, find out how it could bring you value. It is a tool in a toolbox. You have a bunch of other tools too. You have your network, you have your mentors, you have your family, your parents. All of these are things that you could use to grow as a person, to grow as an employee. How you leverage them is up to you. My aha moment for AI, and again, because I work in the defense community, AI wasn't really acceptable. I had my blinders on for a very long time until in the state of Connecticut, somebody reached out to me and said, hey, our team's going to be out there. We have to run this prompt-a-thon. Are you willing to come and be a coach? And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I want to go network. I want to meet more people. Connecticut doesn't have these networking things. Count me in, sign me up. So I went to this promptathon, and they said, hey, Justin, you just need to coach them on how to prompt. I'm like, guys, how'd you prompt? So, you need to exercise that muscle like anything else, use every day, and be able to learn what equals a good prompt if you're using generative AI, right? Like, what's the context you want? What's the expectation? What are the goals of what you're asking it to do? And what other factors do you want it to take into account? If you say, hey, draw me a picture of a kid, it might draw you a cartoon character of a kid. It might be a realistic picture. It might have a background with unicorns in it, or it might have a background of a pond. Like, you're not setting the expectation correctly. And the more you know how to do that, the more you're going to be able to do with AI, the more valuable you're going to be able to be, the more you could grow your company, right? So companies need to exercise.
Yeah, I think you also, if you have that gene, or you coach yourself into that mindset, like, if you play with it to see its boundaries, well, then you can also determine where that ends and the gaps that need to be filled, and where the opportunities are now presented. The job, it's going to steal my jobs kind of conversation. Okay, some jobs are going to change, right? But if you look at all of the innovations and all of the different periods, right? Like, there were no Airbnb hosts in 2010, right? Like, there was no influencer, creator occupations, 7 years, whatever it is, right? Like, all of these evolutions, there's no blockchain development, right? Like, this just, yes, it changes what it was, but it just morphs it into different perspectives.
We're still in the early days of it, and it's scary to say the early days. And again, I was reaching out to a teacher on these stats, so they're fresh in my mind. But it's crazy to think that the early days means that they're, at least in the Microsoft world, with one of our products called Copilot, there's 10 million, or maybe it's 100 million active monthly users of the one platform. But still, that's just scratching the surface of the global population that could use it, barely scratching the surface. And step one is like, get everybody using it to a certain extent. You guys have empowered everybody. Now, talking with your CTO, I also know that you have built what we would call differentiated AI. So based on your business and how you guys operate and how you engage with customers, is there something that you could build specifically for your purpose with your own IP that you contain to something that you control? So you're not feeding the LLM. Whereas for everybody else, maybe they have like a ChatGPT or something else where they just could use it for quick answers, quick thought processes, ideate, as their own little personal assistants. But once you embed it into your business, and with manufacturers, that might mean like doing quality assurance checks. In my world, like, is there a scratch on this piece of metal somewhere? It could change how you operate completely.
The biggest opportunity, I think, in the short term, at least from what I see in daily use, right, is that bridge from the LLM interface to other connectivity and other sources, right? And like, that's where right now you still need to know some level of development, or know Python, or be able to, put together a RAG system where, like, 6 months from now, like, that gap will be filled, right? Like, you can just tell and talk through what you want it to accomplish, and it will be done. So, someone was talking about how they're creating, curriculum and training, and I said, well, be careful, because you're putting a business model around a point in time that I think is going to be exponentially shorter than we've ever seen as far as evolution goes.
Yeah, part of what I was telling this teacher is like, hey, what I talked to you about 3 months ago isn't even applicable anymore, because it changed that rapidly. With being able to build your own, we call them agents, but being able to build your own agents a year ago, like, yeah, you need a lot of that Python experience, or you need a lot of understanding of how the LLMs work. Now, using natural language, like I built one for the regulation that I deal with called Cybersecurity Maturity Model. You give it the data sources you want by literally, same thing as attaching a file to an email, and you say, use this data source, and then you tell it what you want to be able to answer, and what types of answers you want to respond to, and like what you don't, right? Like, what are the guardrails, what's acceptable use? And then boom, you create it. And once people realize how easy it is, like it's going to take off. But people are still just learning, right? Like we hear loud marketing from incredible companies with incredible counsel from media companies about what sticks, what message is working. So a lot of marketing out there saying like, hey, this is the next best thing. But like the next best thing is out there. People just haven't found it and haven't started using it in their daily life. Once they start doing that, their little light bulbs are going to go off, and then they're going to be hooked and they're going to use it to go build themselves, build their skills, build their capabilities. You know, AI is used for a lot of things, you know, training people, educating people, building something, designing something.
I mean, I'm a fan.
I'm excited, but I'm also, you know, anxiously waiting the future to see what it holds. And the only way that I can impact the future is get involved. You know, show up, be here at things like this, have a dialogue, be engaged, you know, drive change the way that I want change to take place. And, you know, for me, it's all about helping students get ahead, helping communities be prepared for what tomorrow holds.
Well, I think now more than ever, like that, because so much of that conversation doesn't happen or happens in a forum or in a Reddit or, you know, in a Discord or whatever it may be, getting to a sort of a public gathering event and talking out these different scenarios, you know, is really one of the healthiest ways to actually plan for and kind of evolve through this future where, to your point, 3 months and the entire world changes, right? And if you're waiting to see what was mass adopted next, you're already behind. So these conversations are hopefully intended to keep everyone on the forefront of that.
And even getting leaders together to share best practices and what's working and not, and help each other understand how to build those communities of success, center of excellence, champions, whatever you want to call it. So like I've got a team of 12 people and helping make sure that they can teach the next people behind them and like scale out some of those best practices. It's really important. And you can't do it in a silo. You've got to network with others and learn what's working, what isn't working, what's been tried, what hasn't been tried. And, you know, you don't get that from sitting behind a desk. You get it from being out there and, you know, working with others.
Last question, because I know we're running on time, but how is either, you know, you and your philosophy or, you know, Microsoft, how do you balance that? You know, we need to plan, right? Like you had mentioned it, like we need to be thinking 10 years ahead, but, you know, kind of executing in quarters. But like when it's happening so fast, how do you even remain, like get alignment, make a decision to even
I'll tell you.
Execute that quickly?
Yeah, Microsoft is a big machine. So like how Microsoft does it versus how I think we can do it at a community level, you know, that doesn't have the big resources that Microsoft has. But you know, step one is being unified on the goal, you know, and the mission. At Microsoft, our mission is to empower everybody on the planet to achieve more. And like, what does that mean? And what are the incremental tactics that we could take to achieve that? So you take, you know, what's the strategy? And then you break it out into different techniques, tactics, or, you know, work streams in order to achieve that mission. And you have to fail fast, right? Like it's probably a big thing in your industry too, right? Fail fast. Don't be afraid to say this doesn't work. Rip it up and start over. And know what is the thing that's going to move the needle the most at the end of the year. What's the thing that's going to deliver the end outcome that you want as a business or as a person? And, you know, what are you after? For me, it's my personal measure is how many people do I train and educate and get employed? Like my number one thing of all these community engagements I do is how do I help give the next person an opportunity, right? Somebody gave me an opportunity along the way after I got my MBA, like I'm constantly paying that back. So that's my measure. As an employee of Microsoft, it's like, how do I help grow the business that I'm in? And I know very specifically what that metric is and, you know, what we're trying to achieve and what areas of growth we're looking for. So
but it takes confidence to do that, and it takes a strong company with diversified risk portfolio to be able to do that type of, you know, I think when you talk about this small community, my mind went to, you know, ChatGPT had 100 million users in 2 months.
Fastest growing platform ever.
All LLMs had over 100 million active users within 12 months.
Yep.
It took, what was the stat? It was like 14 years for 100 million people to have a cell phone, right? Like that that is not is not true anymore. So like when we talk about like just failing fast, and then my mind goes to a government conversation of like, oh, we didn't get that resolved in this session, we'll stay it until next year. It's like,
and then next year,
it's like that's or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's like that. Okay, well, that's where we get stagnated.
Yeah. When I leave, I'm going to put something in one of these AI prompts because you mentioned how fast ChatGPT was adopted. I wonder on a graph that compared to K-pop Demon Hunters and like which one hit a higher amount of views faster. So yeah, but hey, it's been great being on here.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate the conversation, the opportunity to talk.
Yeah, good to meet you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
No problem.
Justin Orcutt.